In the final weeks of her life, Marilyn Monroe told multiple people the same thing. She was going to hold a press conference and reveal everything. Everything about the Kennedy brothers. Everything they had told her. Everything she had written down in her diary about government secrets, CIA assassination plots, and the private lives of the most powerful men in America. 6 weeks later, she was dead. Her phone records from that night disappeared. Wiretap recordings of her final hours were seized by the government and never released. Her housekeeper changed her story about what happened multiple times over 30 years. And Robert Kennedy's official whereabouts that evening have been contradicted by multiple witnesses whose accounts were never formally investigated. The official verdict is probable suicide. This is what the evidence actually shows. Marilyn Monroe met John F. Kennedy in the late 1950s through their mutual friend, Peter Lawford, who was married to Kennedy's sister, Patricia. Their relationship became intimate and continued after Kennedy became president in 1961. Monroe also began a separate relationship with Robert Kennedy, JFK's brother and Attorney General of the United States. These relationships were an enormous security risk. Monroe was emotionally vulnerable, struggled with addiction, and was under surveillance by multiple intelligence agencies, including the FBI and CIA. J. Edgar Hoover had been building a file on JFK's personal life for years and used it as leverage to keep his position as FBI director. Monroe was part of that file. She was also keeping a diary. That diary reportedly contained detailed notes about conversations she had with both Kennedy brothers, including discussions about the CIA's attempts to assassinate Fidel Castro and other classified matters that JFK had apparently shared with her. In the weeks before her death, Monroe's behavior became increasingly erratic. She had been fired from her latest film in June 1962 after repeatedly failing to show up on set. She was in financial difficulty despite her fame. She had become convinced the Kennedy brothers were pulling away from her, and she was telling people around her that she intended to go public with everything she knew. In the final weeks of her life, Monroe's phone was being tapped. This was confirmed by wiretap expert Bernard Spindle, who claimed to have recordings of Monroe's final hours that proved the official account of her death was false. Those recordings were seized by the Manhattan District Attorney's Office in 1966. They have never been made public. On the evening of August 4th, 1962, Monroe made several phone calls, including one to Peter Lawford. Lawford later gave conflicting accounts of that conversation. In one version, Monroe sounded drowsy and said goodbye in a way that alarmed him. In another version, the call was routine. The exact time Monroe died has never been established with certainty. Her housekeeper, Eunice Murray, initially told police she discovered the body around midnight. She later changed her account multiple times over the following decades. At one point, she admitted that Robert Kennedy had visited Monroe that evening, a visit she had previously denied entirely. Murray died in 1994, having never given a completely consistent account of what happened that night. The doctor who certified Monroe's death waited several hours before calling police. He gave explanations for the delay that investigators found unsatisfactory. He was never formally questioned under oath about the timeline. The Los Angeles Police Department conducted an investigation that lasted less than 2 weeks before ruling the death a probable suicide. Monroe's phone records from that evening were never recovered. They had disappeared before investigators could examine them. In 1982, the Los Angeles District Attorney reviewed the case and concluded there was no evidence of foul play. But the review also noted that crucial evidence that might have resolved questions about the timeline was no longer available. It had vanished in the 20 years since her death. Robert Kennedy's whereabouts on August 4, 1962, remain officially unclear. Kennedy family records place him at a ranch in Northern California that weekend. Multiple witnesses, including a hotel manager, a police officer, and several Los Angeles residents, told investigators over the years that they had seen Robert Kennedy in Los Angeles that day. One witness claimed to have seen Kennedy leaving Monroe's neighborhood on the evening of August 4th. These witness accounts were never fully investigated by any official body. The FBI file on Monroe ran to hundreds of pages and remained classified for decades. When portions were finally released under Freedom of Information Act requests, they revealed extensive surveillance of Monroe's activities and communications in her final years. The file confirmed the FBI was aware of her relationships with both Kennedy brothers and was monitoring the security implications closely. What the file does not contain is any record of FBI activity on the night of her death. That absence has never been explained. Marilyn Monroe was one of the most famous women in the world. She had intimate knowledge of the private lives of the President of the United States and the Attorney General. She was reportedly keeping a diary containing details of classified government operations. She had told multiple people she intended to go public. She died 6 weeks later at 36 years old. The phone records from her final hours disappeared. The wiretap recordings were seized and never released. Her housekeeper changed her story for 30 years. The doctor who certified her death was never questioned under oath. And Robert Kennedy's presence in Los Angeles that evening has been attested to by multiple witnesses whose accounts were never formally investigated. The official verdict is probable suicide. The question Monroe's death forces you to ask is not whether the most powerful family in America was capable of covering up what happened to a woman who knew too much. It is whether the evidence that might have answered that question was allowed to disappear on purpose, and whether we will ever know the truth about what happened in that house on the night of August 4th, 1962.